What's up, guys? This is TheKephas.
So there's been a bit of a hot topic pop up in the WoW community. It seems like almost every topic about WoW tends to be a hot topic for whatever reason, but it is what it is. This is one I kind of want to jump in on though, because it's one that does concern me a bit, and it's one that I have a unique perspective on: the discussion of the role that add-ons play in WoW and the fact that some people feel that they should outright be banned. And I wanted to give my thoughts on this as a disabled player who depends on add-ons in order to play the game. Now, the fact that some people feel that add-ons should be banned has kind of upset some other players. Even though I do depend on add-ons to play the game, if Blizzard banned add-ons today and I, for whatever reason, couldn't play the game anymore, I've got plenty of other games to play. Even though I do have a unique perspective, a unique situation, and a dependency that probably isn't entirely being accounted for when people say that add-ons should be banned, and I sort of give people the benefit of the doubt in that regard, I'm not mad about it. I understand where people are coming from, I think, and I want to try to explore that the best I can. But before we get into all that, let me try and explain the role and the significance that add-ons play in my experience with World of Warcraft. So I'm severely visually handicapped. I have no vision in my left eye. I have 20/400 vision in my right eye. I have very little peripheral vision, nystagmus, which makes it hard to focus. And so basically what all that means is that I'm incredibly nearsighted, and I have no peripheral vision and no vision in my left eye. So in spite of that though, I play a lot of video games. I have my whole life, and for the most part I get by fine. There are always going to be some challenges in every game I play, and there are different ways to overcome those challenges. I always find ways, and if I can't, then I just move on to another game, unless it's a game I really want to play, in which case I will suffer through it the best I can. And WoW is one of those games that I really wanted to play. When it came out, I was really excited. But of course I didn't discover it until like 2006. It had been a little bit, but I was excited to finally give it a try. And so when I started playing it, I immediately ran into a problem, which was that I couldn't read anything. All of the text was just way too small. Couldn't read quest text, couldn't read tooltips, couldn't read spells, anything. It was a problem. And so I was trying to find a solution. There was no solution in game. So I'm like, maybe I can like hack the game or something. I don't know. Like there had been other games that I had done that with, like Total War. I mean, it wasn't hacking, but I did go in and change a couple of things, looked up some guides online, and I was able to make the UI a little bit bigger. Messed things up. It was a little bit janky, but it worked. So I was hoping I could do something like that with WoW. And then I discovered Clear Font. And it was the first add-on that I installed in WoW. And then I realized that there's a website called Curse, and they had all kinds of add-ons that you could put into the game. And then I found out that this was perfectly legitimate. You could do this. WoW was the game that allowed for this, actually, and I didn't know that, so I got really excited. So I installed Clear Font, and suddenly the problem was solved. I could read all the text and go ahead and play the game. And as time went on, I discovered more and more problems. The deeper I got into the game, the more challenges would pop up, like being able to see my spells and debuffs and read panels and different things. And so I discovered more and more add-ons. I used Move Anything to scale up character panels, and I discovered Xpearl and Bartender and different add-ons that allowed me to adjust my UI in a way that was a little bit more beneficial for me. Eventually I discovered an add-on called Ice HUD, which put my health in the middle of the screen. This was before the player nameplate existed, and that was also very useful back in the day. And so I think that like a lot of times with add-ons, they are there to serve a purpose. They're there to meet a need that the game itself doesn't meet. And I think that what a lot of people would argue, well, that's all good that those add-ons help you, but what should happen is Blizzard should just ban add-ons and then add a lot of those features to the game. I think that would be great if Blizzard did add all those things to the game, all those accessibility features, and then just in general, even if it's not like helping a disabled player like me, more customization is always going to be good. The problem though, and this is mostly from a disability perspective, is even the most devoted developer, they're going to struggle to keep up with the large variety of demands and needs that players have. And so that's where add-ons can be beneficial, because there are a lot more people working on different add-on features that can add a lot more accessibility to the game at a rate that probably one development team isn't able to. And so it is nice in WoW to have add-ons, because there are very few situations left where I'm like, man, I wish I could do this, where anytime I think that, I discover an add-on that lets me do that and fulfill that need. And that's one reason why I do advocate for add-ons, even in single player games like Elden Ring. When the conversation about accessibility came up for Elden Ring, I was actually against it, because the type of accessibility people were trying to advocate for, and they were using disabled people for it, was making the game easier. And I don't agree with making the game easier. I sort of resent that notion, because it implies that as a disabled person, I need the game to be easier in order to play it. And I resent that entirely. I like to step up to the challenge and play it on the same level as anybody else, whether they have a disability or not. And if I'm not able to, then rather than demanding that the developers change their vision of the game to suit me, I would just rather go play something different. On the other hand, though, when I was playing Elden Ring, I did kind of wish that there was some customization options, or even some add-on options that would allow me to move my player health bar over my head, like have a nameplate. That would have been very useful. Enemies have nameplates and it helps out a lot, but me not having one does kind of suck. And so having to look over to the corner of the screen, look away from the action at times, could get to be a little bit problematic. Now, I overcame it, and it did play a factor at a time or two in my demise, but for the most part, I got pretty good at glancing quickly, and dealing with it. But it would have made the game a whole lot better for me if I could have moved that stuff to the middle of the screen. And so that way I'm not having to look away as much. That would have been nice, but it is what it is. And like I said, whenever I can, I try to just overcome the challenges the best I can. But that's a single player game where I'm able to move at my own pace. Barriers become a lot more noticeable in a multiplayer game than they do a single player game, because I'm not necessarily always moving at my own pace. From my perspective, add-ons overall are a benefit to the game. They do more good than harm in my perspective, because again, it's the perspective of someone who literally needs them in order to play the game at all. Now, despite all that I've just said, I want to reinforce the common ground that I do share with people who disagree and feel that WoW should drop add-ons outright. Because fundamentally, I agree with the notion that it would be much better for the game and for the players if all those needs were met and those features were supported through the base game in favor of add-ons. The more those features are supported, the less need there actually is for add-ons, and I do think that that makes the game better overall when that happens. And that's the case for any game. Like if Blizzard would just hire the console port devs and they could just natively put all that stuff in the base game and improve on it in a lot of ways, I think that would only make the game better for anybody that wants to play WoW with a controller. And WoW is totally playable with a controller, especially with the help of console port. But in fairness, I don't think that the types of add-ons I've mentioned so far are the kinds that players seem to have a problem with. I don't think that most players care about how your UI looks or about how you're functionally playing the game, and I feel like it would be entirely in bad faith for me to suggest otherwise. I don't want to misrepresent people, but I did bring all this up because people are arguing in favor of removing all add-ons, and I wanted to demonstrate as many ways as I could think of as to how add-ons help me and how they can help other players as well. And so that's just a response for the remove all add-ons argument, but it's not meant to be a way to misrepresent the arguments that people have, because I think it's very clear the add-ons that people have a problem with are what are considered to be combat add-ons. Your parsing, damage meters, raid log checkers, and add-ons like deadly boss mods. I do agree that these add-ons have been a problem for the game, and they're one of the main reasons why games like Final Fantasy doesn't allow add-ons, because they're mainly targeting these types of add-ons. There are people that do parse in Final Fantasy. There are add-ons, despite the fact that they're not allowed. There are people that use them, and the biggest thing that they say in Final Fantasy is just don't talk about it. If you use it, we can't really tell, but if you mention it and if you attack other players because of their parsing data, then you're going to get banned from the game. And I applaud Final Fantasy XIV for doing that, because I think that that's one of the biggest issues with add-ons like recount, details, and other damage meters, is that they're often misused. They can be used as a way to bludgeon other players for not performing as well, or for being on the lower end of the DPS meters. It doesn't happen all the time, but it can happen sometimes. And they can also be misread by players and make them think that they're either doing better or worse than they actually are. Let me give an example of what I mean by this. Back in the day when I used to raid with my 10 man, and this was happening back in Firelands, I raided from like Wrath of the Lich King all the way through early Legion, I'm pretty sure. And I remember this specifically happened in Firelands. We were raiding that, and I was top DPS. The reason why I was top DPS is because I had an awesome raid team, and my raid leader decided that because I had a visual impairment, that my best use would be to be put on dealing high damage and focusing on interrupts, because those are things that I could do. If there were extra mechanics like CCing, targeting different enemies, off tanking, clicking something on the screen or whatever on the ground, whatever it was, those were always delegated to other teammates. And my team, again, was very supportive and awesome, and they were really cool about doing this stuff. But they would always note that, like, man, your DPS is so much higher than mine. I'm not doing as much damage. And I would remind people all the time, like, guys, I'm just mostly standing here doing the occasional interrupt and just hitting the boss as hard as I can. You guys are all doing the hard work. You're doing the mechanics. You're keeping the raid alive and getting us through the boss fight. You're doing the heavy lifting. I'm just here doing damage. So of course my DPS is going to be higher because I've got the easy job, and that's where DPS meters can have a problem, because they don't take into account the mechanics and different things that you have to do. And so there are definitely times where people will not follow mechanics in favor of getting as much damage as possible. This kind of stuff happens all the time. It's like when you're playing Helldivers and like people are bragging because they've got the most kills at the end of the game, but it's like, yeah, but you didn't help with any objectives. You didn't find any of the stuff that you can find, the secrets and all that kind of stuff. You didn't follow your team at all. You just like threw turrets down and called it a day, and there are people like that, and that's a problem that people have. It has a problem in Overwatch where people were bragging because they got the gold medals, but they didn't help with objectives, and so that can be a problem with add-ons like Recount, is they can be misused. They can be a tool for toxic players. And then there's deadly boss mods. And I think that if the damage meters are the appetizer, then DBM is the main course of this conversation. It's been around for so long. I used to raid with it back in Wrath, and I was still using it through early Legion when I finally stopped raiding completely. It's pretty much expected that you're going to have to use DBM if you raid at any level in WoW, but it's almost necessary if you're raiding at a higher level with higher difficulties. People are pretty much going to require that you have it, and that's especially the case nowadays because Blizzard designs their game and their encounters around people having the add-on, and so that pretty much makes it necessary. And that's kind of the first of many problems that I personally have with DBM. And I think this is where a lot of the conflict happens, because so many people use it and so many people have been using it for so long, and it's just kind of the way things are. A lot of people would characterize WoW players in the two categories of casual versus hardcore, but I actually think there's a better characterization. And it's people's approach to video games. You have people that, as I would say, want to get plugged into the matrix. They want to get plugged into the game, and they want to immerse themselves in the game as if they're in the world, interacting with the world and the things going on in the world and with the things there are to do in the game on that level. And then you have other people who aren't wanting to plug into the matrix. They're looking at this game as a bunch of ones and zeros, as people who aren't plugged into the matrix look at the matrix. You're trying to live in this world. I'm trying to play in this world. I'm looking to maximize these ones and zeros and read them as efficiently as possible. And that's where I get my gratification from. There are just some people that play video games this way. And I think that in most online games, you will find these people. And as time goes on, you will find these people become more prevalent because the other types of people tend to move on to another game that they're trying to immerse themselves in. I don't think that most people play video games to read ones and zeros. And I think that if I was trying to sell World of Warcraft to my friends and get them to play, I don't think I would show them a race to world first, because I don't think that would interest people. I don't think that would attract people. I don't think that number crunching and meta chasing and looking at text on the screen and seeing unintelligible boss mechanics, I don't think that would attract people to the game. And that's what you kind of see. If you're not engaged with the content yourself, it can be very difficult to see and understand what's happening in WoW on a high level raid. Like, you have to go through a process and get to a place where this is like normal for you and you're cool with that. Like, let's say I was to add DBM to Elden Ring, and it would do the same thing for me in Elden Ring that it does for me in WoW. It tells me what Margit's going to do, and I can react to what DBM tells me. I think that would fundamentally make Elden Ring a worse game. And any game, really, I think that it would make it worse. If I added it to Final Fantasy XIV, I think it would make it worse. If I went all the way back in time and added it to like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, I think that it would make the game worse. And I want to explain why that is. So when you're playing a video game, there are two primary ways that a game delivers information to you as the player. The first is what's happening in the game's world, whether it's sound effects, voice lines, animations. Now, sometimes you can't deliver information comprehensively through the game's world, and that requires a second form of information to be delivered through your user interface. And this can be through menus, panels, character sheets, UI elements, HUDs, action bars, player health bars, all those things. And those things exist in pretty much every game. Even the most immersive game has some UI elements because they're necessary. But in general, if information can be provided through the in-game world in a comprehensive way, that's almost always going to be preferred over UI elements because it's going to provide a much more immersive experience. So the reason why my mind jumped to Elden Ring and strangely Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is because they're oddly similar games in that the primary way that those games get you to interact with their worlds is through boss encounters. By observing the boss's attack patterns, learning their telegraphs, and responding accordingly. Eventually, you'll learn the boss well enough that you will be able to overcome the boss and move on to the next one. And World of Warcraft is no different. By design, it uses the same methods by relying on telegraphs. You will see ground effects, you will hear voice lines before certain attacks happen, other animations, all designed to let you know what is about to happen in the fight. And the more you engage with the fight, the more you will learn how to respond accordingly to the different telegraphs as the difficulty ramps up with each boss encounter. The main problem with deadly boss mods is not that it makes the game easier, although it clearly does. It's more that it takes a lot of information that was primarily intended to be delivered to the player through the in-game world and delivers it through the UI. The result is that you interact with the world a lot less and respond a lot more to text prompts and timers delivered to you on screen through the mod. For a lot of players, this really isn't much of a problem because, frankly, Blizzard hasn't done an incredible job at telegraphing their boss encounters. Effects on the ground can be very hard to see. There can be a lot of them, and it can be very difficult to follow what the boss is doing with so many different things going on. Deadly boss mods becomes a lot more appealing because it makes the game a lot more comprehensive, which is perpetuated further by Blizzard designing their boss encounters around the mod. And so you have a lot of people that feel that these types of add-ons are a contributing factor to a type of gameplay that is almost as uninteresting to watch as it is to participate in, which is why so many people don't. But I don't think that the solution to this is to ban deadly boss mods from the game. Rather, it's to make deadly boss mods irrelevant. And in order to do that, Blizzard should stop designing boss encounters around the use of deadly boss mods and instead design them to be more comprehensive so that you won't need deadly boss mods. Make your telegraphs easier to read and make ground effects easier to see, and suddenly you won't be needing deadly boss mods anymore. This is certainly the case in Final Fantasy XIV. Encounters can be very difficult, but I don't necessarily feel like I need an add-on like deadly boss mods. Now, much of this part of the conversation has focused on deadly boss mods, but I think that you could add WeakAuras to this as well. Now, I focus more on DBM primarily because it's what I have more experience with, where I've only scratched the surface of WeakAuras. But my interest in WeakAuras keeps rising as I discover more of its uses and things that can help me play the game with my disability. For example, I recently was watching this clip.
Decent. Blade Fury. Oh my god! What the f is this? Oh, that shows me my subterfuge? Oh my god, this is the f***ing OP! Bro, come on, man!
So, Outlaw Rogue has always been one of those specs that has felt nearly impossible for me to be able to play just because of the number of things that there are to keep track of within the UI. This would apply to any class that has a lot of dots or buffs or just a lot of UI elements that you're having to keep track of. So with simple WeakAuras like the ones demonstrated in that video, suddenly Outlaw Rogue doesn't feel quite as impossible, and I'm curious to see what other WeakAuras might exist for other specs as well that might suddenly make a lot more classes approachable for me. WeakAuras can possibly be the most significant add-on in terms of accessibility, in terms of being able to customize the way information is being presented to me through the UI. Because WeakAuras allows me to use images, fonts of any size, and sound effects to get that information across. And I think that's a good thing. Again, I don't think that it's good to have difficulty based on the player's ability to read the UI. And I don't think that this is an issue with add-ons being too useful. On the contrary, I think it's more an issue with the UI not being effective enough at delivering information in a comprehensive way. And you could argue maybe even a case for rotations becoming a little bit more complicated than they otherwise should be. And WeakAuras does seem to share a problem with DBM, where it seems like a lot of the top guilds actually use WeakAuras more than DBM now in a raid setting. This is not something that I personally have any experience with, so I don't want to speak on it too much, but it shares the problem where WeakAuras feels pretty much required to engage with certain types of content, and I do, again, feel like that is a problem when these add-ons get broken by patches from time to time and suddenly raid teams are wiping to even the most basic mechanics. It's not necessarily a sign that players suck. It's more a sign that players have been conditioned to react to very specific UI elements in favor of reacting to the world and the encounters themselves. So in my mind, it's very easy, even if you don't fully agree, to understand why a lot of people feel like these add-ons are bad for the game. So this is my counter argument for the no add-ons crowd. Rather than asking Blizzard to just ban add-ons and then improve the game later, why not just call on Blizzard to improve the game and make add-ons irrelevant in the first place? This way, the various needs that people have are met through add-ons until Blizzard is able to meet them themselves. Ever since Blizzard added UI customization, there are a lot less people that use UI mods, so this method has already been proven to work. And if Blizzard comes across a mod that they feel shouldn't be implemented into the game, then perhaps it shouldn't be a mod either. And of course, if this is all stuff that Blizzard isn't willing or able to do, then that is the precise reason why WoW needs add-ons.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by clicking that like button. And feel free to share it with your friends so they can enjoy it as well. And if you'd like to see more videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos are posted. You can also follow me on Facebook, and if you'd like, you can support my work on Patreon. Links to all that stuff can be found in the description below. This is TheKephas. Until next time.